line. We're starting a new chapter, and today it's so exciting what we're learning today. I love it. So excited. Chapter 3, we're starting a new chapter. It's on page 55 of the Practical Tanya. This one is available online, Amazon, and good Jewish bookstores around the world. What's so exciting about this chapter is that after the introduction of chapters 1 and 2 of Tanya, where we've learned the engines that are inside of you. You have in chapter 1, we learned about the animal soul. In chapter 2, we learned about the godly soul. We've got these two very powerful energies inside of us. If you ever feel schizophrenic, you're normal. It's okay, because there's two of you inside of you. There's an animal soul and there's a godly soul. Now, it's getting a little crowded in there, right? How do you keep things together? How do you keep things flowing? Chapter 3 introduces us to our humanity, because in chapter 3 we're given the control panel. What's the control panel? This is what allows you to determine which one of those two souls you're going to engage, because there's two ways to live our lives. One is waiting for things to happen, and the other one is to make things happen, right? You can live your life proactive or reactive. I think that most of us live proactive lives when it comes to making a living. For example, you got to go out and kill something and bring it home, to employ an African metaphor, right? You got to bring home the bread. So when it comes to our parnasa, our livelihood, we're very proactive. What about our marriages? Are you proactive in your marriage, or are you reactive? Now, of course, when you're dating, we're all very proactive. We woo our spouses and we're dashing and charming and oozing with charisma. It's fantastic. A couple once said that in the first year when they were dating, he did all the talking and she did all the listening. Then came the first year of marriage. She did all the talking and he did all the listening.
He did.
Then after that, they both did all the talking and the neighbors did all the listening.
Now they don't talk to each other anymore.
Then they get the
So when it comes to our marriages, we can be reactive. Maybe you'll go to therapy, maybe you'll get a little conscious, and you'll become more proactive. And there's something very beautiful about being proactive in your relationship. When you can anticipate your spouse's reaction to certain things, when you can figure out his or her triggers and avoid them, or whatever their buttons are that they need. In the same way, I'm moving it up a notch in our spirituality. How many of us are proactive in our spirituality, and how many of us are reactive in our spirituality? So how many people will come to the rabbi when a catastrophe happens and say, why me? Why did God do this to me? Now you woke up at the age of 67. This is the first time you woke up and you remember that there's a God. Right. Well, now that a calamity happened, now you remember. Where were you the first 67 years of your life? Right. So many of us are just in a state of unconscious or a coma when it comes to our spirituality. Right. We don't hear the messages. Right. So what Tanya's doing then in chapter 3 is alerting us to the toolkit, to the control panel that we have in front of us, because we actually have two extremely powerful tools. Be more specific, it's 3 very powerful tools. 3 very, very powerful tools that will determine the trajectory of the rest of your life, spiritually speaking, and subsequently your emotions. Imagine if you could control the way you feel. Can you imagine if you could control the way you feel? Would you like that? Isn't that amazing? Who doesn't want to feel amazing? Who doesn't want to feel good? Now, the fact of the matter is, you cannot change your emotions. Emotions are deep rooted. They are by design sort of infused within you. by factory made, So some people are just very wild, they're very rambunctious. Other people are just timid and meek. There's all sorts of different emotions. Some people are ostentatious, others are withdrawn. Those emotions, well, I'm not even sure if those are emotions. Those are characteristics. Feelings, some people are just drawn to be more positive, other people are just more negative. Introverts, extroverts, or pessimists and optimists. But there's three very powerful tools within us that we're about to be introduced to, that they give us the power to not change our emotions, but to guide them. So generally, as an introduction, what I'm going to say now is, in chapter 3, we're told that each one of these two souls is made up of intellect and emotion. Intellect and emotion. Together, these two, intellect and emotion, make up 10 windows in our soul. They are our souls. What is your soul? What is your soul? I have this conversation with people many times where they'll say, "Oh, Rabbi, I don't believe in the soul." So I'll say, "Well, what are you not believing in? Like what is it exactly that you're not believing in?" Well, I have my body, I have my my feelings, I have my my understanding. That is all that I believe in, but I don't believe in my soul. So I'll say to them, your soul is your understanding and your feeling. That is your soul. Anything which is not captured in the 5 senses is spiritual. 5 senses, right? If it's captured in the 5 senses, it's physical. If it's not captured in the 5 senses, it's spiritual. So the parts of yourself that you can't capture in the 5 senses, intellect and emotion, those are your soul. So it falls into 2 general categories, intellect and emotion. So just think about that for a moment. When you're understanding something, you're having a soul experience. When you're feeling something, you're having a soul experience. The question is, which soul? Now, what we're going to learn is that there are 3 intellectual and 7 emotional attributes. Let's call them windows. Now, do you remember when Windows 95 came out? I think it was 1995, right? And it was so cool. We had this screen, and you could just click on a window, and it would take you to a virtual world. It was an amazing thing, right? You could just go places. You could click on this and go to a game, and click on that and go to the internet, right? This would take you to the Google, right? Just like you have those windows on the computer screen, you actually have these windows on your soul screen. And you can choose which one to tap on, which one to engage. It's actually your choice, which one to engage. Now, emotions are less in your control than intellect is. So when I say the 3 powerful tools, I'm talking about the 3 intellectual components. Because your emotions, you'll get triggered by stuff. As Jews, we have 2,000 years of collective trauma. So Jews, when we face anti-Semitism, we react very strongly because we've endured tremendous trauma. So we have this inherited trauma within us. If you've got some sort of a wounded attachment from early childhood, then in your relationships you might react adversely when prompted, when triggered. So you can't really control that. What you can do is catch yourself. You can catch yourself at some point in within your rage or within your meltdown. You can try to catch yourself and bring yourself to a state of calm. How? Through the 3 intellectual attributes. Okay, so I want to just focus for a few moments on those 3 intellectual attributes because they're so incredibly powerful and they're quite simple. Those 3 are Chachma, Bina, Das. Chachma, Bina, Das, which means, which collectively creates the acronym of Chabad. Chabad stands for Chachma, Bina, Das, because Chabad is all about learning how to use these 3. That's what Chabad is. It's about learning how to use your own control panel. Because here's what happens. The Chachma means the idea, the burst, the flash of inspiration. For example, you got a problem with your taxes. You don't know how to solve something. Something went wrong, right? You got a problem with the real estate. You got a problem with a child, God forbid. You're not sure what to do. You're facing a problem. And then, boom, you get an idea. That's chachma. When you get an idea, that's chachma. That's idea. But what do you do when you have an idea? What are you supposed to do with it? You can't act on it.
You ruminate.
You process. You process the idea. What do you process? You flesh it out. Okay, I got an idea. Just don't bother me right now because I'm thinking. Right? So what you do is you're fleshing it out, breadth and width. Right? You just sort of like, okay, so how would this lay out? And you figure it out. That's Bina. Bina's comprehension. You comprehend the idea. That's it. And once you've comprehended something, once you've understood something, you're good, right? What are you going to do once you comprehended something? You bring it to action. So there's a very, very important step that most people are not aware of. So most people now will take this exit from Bina into action. It's okay, I know what to do now. Now I'm going to go to my accountant. I know what to do now. Now I'm going to talk to my son, right? There's one more step. And this is, for me, the step which makes us human. This is where I celebrate my own humanity. This step is the bridge from Bina to Das, from comprehension to feeling. Idea is the first one. Bina, comprehension, is the second one. And the third one, Das, is feeling. What does that mean? You know, some people, we call them a cup mensch. You know what a cup mensch translates as? Cup, what's cup? Head. Mensch is a person. You have people that are cup menschen. They're head people. Is that a compliment if somebody calls you a head person? A cup mensch?
People say you're a head case.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Crazy.
That means you're crazy. You're
No,
a
no,
head
no, no.
case.
In Yiddish, a cup mensch means you're a smart person, but you're stuck in your head. You have no empathy. You have no compassion. You're not here. You're like an absent-minded professor. Lovely. But you're not a mensch.
We call that an airhead.
But airhead is someone, I think, that's not smart. That's like in one ear and out the other. Goes. There's nothing in between the ears.
This is the guy who's stuck in the ivory tower.
Right. So a very smart person, but just detached
Right.
from reality.
Right.
Right. So the cup mensch is, the husband who's explaining to his wife why she shouldn't be angry. That's a cup mensch. It never worked in the history of marriages for 4,000 years. What are you doing? Right? Just say you're sorry already. Okay? Stop. Feel bad. Show some remorse. Move on. Right?
Explain to her why she doesn't understand.
Exactly. Why you don't understand why you shouldn't be upset. That's a cup mensch, right? To become a mensch means to bridge the divide from your head to your heart. It goes through the narrows of the neck. You've got to be able to cross this very interesting bridge. Now let's talk about this. It's going to take a little time to develop this idea. So das means feeling. How much of what you learned do you feel? Sorry, how much of what you learned do you feel? When you learn Gemara, Jonathan, do you feel it? That's an intellectual study. It stays in your brain, right? Right. Is there anything that you do learn that you feel? Probably when you read an article about, Israel, or you read an article about, American or Israeli politics or anti-Semitism. You read the article, it makes you, you know what I'm talking about? That's a feeling. Whatever you just learned has translated into feeling, but that was all reactionary. It wasn't, in other words, it was like, you don't need to develop a taste for candy. That's the easy feeling. Kids automatically love candy, right? It's easy to become emotional about anti-Semitism, right? But the question is, if you're a proactive person, you will ensure that you're feeling the feelings that you want to be feeling, not the ones that have been hurled at you by Hollywood, Netflix, the media, and all the other brilliant minds of the marketing brainwashing machines. They're those guys at the marketing companies, and I include Netflix and Hollywood and all the TV stations and all the TV ads, right? Whoever's designing those TV ads, they know you. better than you know you.
299 versus.
There you go. But also, when they made Sesame Street for the first time, which is the most popular children's TV show of all time, apparently, how did they do it? They made a show, and then they played the show to a group of kids with a ticker timer. There was a ticker timer, and every single time that a child turned his head away, they marked it on the ticker. So then they looked back at the ticker timer and they went back. What happened at this moment, at that moment, this moment, that? And they realized, now we need to put a loud noise here. So we'll keep them. Now we need to change the image. We need to change the screen. So these guys are designed to keep your attention. What you're doing is that we're like the kids watching Sesame Street, where our feelings are being manipulated by others. Right? That's what's happening. Our feelings are being manipulated by other people. But imagine if you could manipulate your own feelings. Now you're your own mensch.
Create your own baby shark.
Yeah. I mean, Baby Shark is awesome.
Exactly.
What they're doing there, nobody knows. Hours. No problem. Right? The same song, it's cute. And it changes every few seconds, which is great. But imagine if you could control your own emotion. Now you're becoming a mensch. What I'm doing today really is that I'm raising the bar on being a mensch. That a mensch, which translates as a person, as a human being, is not just an instinctive reaction to what other people are stuffing down your throat like foie gras, emotional foie gras. But imagine if you could sire, if you could command the emotion that you desire and filter out the ones that you don't. Now you're a mensch. And that's what Das does. How do you do this, right? So Tanya in chapter 3 is about to explain like this. Let's just go through the 3 steps, right? Because what happens, just one thing, what happens when you reach that Das, when you reach that feeling, after you've gone through idea, understanding, comprehension, and now feeling. When you've reached that feeling, you know what happens? Now you've created an emotion which you have approved. Not an emotion that was sent to you from some billion-dollar corporation that wants you to buy sugar water, right? You see what I'm saying? Now you've created an emotion. You're actually feeling stuff that you want to be feeling. So what you've done is that you've not changed your emotions. You've just guided your emotions because you can't change your emotions. They're too powerful for us to change. We human beings can't change our emotions, but we can guide them. So whether you're going to have a day look, all of us, we wake up, how many people? First thing they do, they check their email. Their whole day goes based on external stimuli. The whole day is a reaction to external stimuli. But imagine if you could live a day where you say, no. Today's day is going to be guided by from within. Whoa. Okay.
Handle 30 seconds of that. You already had that.
Right. That's why we're in shul in the morning. And let me walk you through this. Okay.
Shabbat.
Shabbat, absolutely. I don't know how people manage without Shabbos. Seriously. It's like living without sleep. How do you manage without sleep? Right? You need the rest to be able to bounce back with a vengeance. Let's talk about the process. So Chachma, how do you reach Chachma? How do you reach an idea? Where does idea come from? Where do ideas come from?
From outside.
From outside. Ideas come from Hashem. Ideas are a gift from God. It's amazing. When you feel, you're like, when you feel overwhelmed by the, it's like a power surge. It's like a lightning strike. That's what Tanya calls it. Tanya calls it a lightning strike. It's like comes from the heavens. What?
What if it's a bad idea?
It could be a bad idea.
From the other side.
Yeah, it could be a bad. That's an interesting question. I don't know about that. I got to think about that.
It's a challenge.
There is this
How you turn that
That's
idea
interesting.
into a good idea.
But I want to say this: how do you solicit a gift from God? 3 words.
Daven.
3 words. The 3 most beautiful words in the English language. I don't know. I don't know. That beautiful question mark. You know what it means when you say a question mark? When you see a question mark, you know what it means? It means that whoever's talking actually has the humility to say, I don't know something. That's what a question mark means. So the question mark is the mark of humility. There's certain people you meet, they know everything about anything always. You ask them any question, they just start talking. They just know, right? But when you have a question mark, you've exhibited humility. Nothing attracts divinity, Godspeed, more than humility. So the question mark is what solicits the lightning strike from above, the God's gift, which is the idea. Okay, that's a pretty simple process. We know that, right? And by the way, this is not a new idea. It says that Kinar Yisrael va'ohaveu, for Israel is a youth, and nevertheless I love him. Chassidus explains that verse because Israel is minimizing themselves like a youth, that they think less of themselves, not so, but less of themselves. So that's why I love them. This is a theme that goes throughout the Torah. Anytime the Jewish people were haughty, they crashed down from their mountain. But whenever they were broken and humble, that's when Hashem picks them up. It's the story, the mountains and valleys of Jewish history. It's a wave which just continues to repeat itself, and heaven help our generation who sometimes might feel as arrogant. And one good thing about anti-Semitism is that it brings us off of our high horses, right? If you think about it from that perspective, it's a very interesting gift from God. I'm not endorsing anti-Semitism. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that there is an interesting element to it from a spiritual perspective. So that's how we solicit Chachma, the first one. But once you have Chachma, now you got to be a mensch. This is a process now that everybody does. Once you have an idea, everybody thinks about their idea. I don't know any person that doesn't process and filter their ideas, right? It's the normal process. You get stuck in your ideas. You filter it out into comprehension. How do you do it? By thinking. That's it, just by thinking. But now, where everybody takes the exit is from Bina. I understand, and I'm good. I closed the book. I can start working now, right? This is where Tanya chapter 3 makes us alive. Alive. How do you become alive? After you've understood something. You close the book. To go from understanding to feeling, it happens through the process of meditation. Meditation is not an Eastern religion concept. It's not foreign to Judaism. Meditation is sourced in Judaism. We have a brain so that we can use it. It's not an invention from some Far Eastern people. Meditation is explained in the end of chapter 3 with some very, very beautiful words. And the way that the Alter Rebbe used it basically is like a laser focus. He says like a laser focus, just like a laser beam, just stay on it. Just stay focused on what it is that you're thinking. There's two reasons to be thinking. One reason to be thinking is to think in order to understand. A second reason to be thinking is to be thinking after you understand. But if I already understand, then what am I thinking about? I'm marinating. I'm what? Internalizing it. I'm personalizing it. I'm allowing it to seep in like steak in the sauce. I already put the sauce on the steak. Why do I need to keep it there? Because now it seeps in, becomes personalized, united with the steak. It gives it more flavor. You can't just throw the marinade on and throw it in the oven. You got to let it sit there for 24 hours, right? So then it really sucks in the juices, and now you got a different steak. Exactly. And that's why we've learned Tanya before. That's why it's so important for us to learn Tanya again. The first time we learned Tanya, we were going from Chachma to Bina. We were going from idea to understanding. But today, you don't say, I did it already. Good. You finished the first part of thinking. Now it's time for the second part of thinking. Now it's time for you to meditate. Now, how long do you need to meditate? As long as you can. You don't have to be in the lotus position. And you don't need to levitate off the earth for any duration of time. To meditate, you just need to close your eyes and turn your phone off. That's all. That's the only thing you need to do. This is why we have a talus. I want to explain to you what a talus is. The talus is beautiful. You have a talus, right? Why do we daven with the talus? So you have an added covering. It's like an added, the yarmulke is all of heaven. A second covering, like a hat that we wear, is a second covering, like an added awe of Hashem, right? But when you're really davening, you take your talus and you're supposed to put it right over your head and get lost in your thoughts. That's what you're supposed to do, and it's beautiful. When I look around the shul, sometimes I see a person that does that. Davening is not a social experience. People get stuck in the mechitza. Why do we have a separation in the shul, men and the women? You don't come here to socialize. You want to socialize at the kiddush. We come to shul to talk. To talk to who? To talk to Hashem. Right? So do that. Talk to Hashem. You're not talking to anybody else. You have the other 23 hours of the day to talk to whoever you want. But for this 1 hour, you talk to Hashem. How do you do it? Get under your talis. Now, I do this. I want to tell you. So whenever I write or whenever I speak, after I understand what it is that I want to say, I'm not ready to talk. I'm not ready to talk. What I need to do now is, after it's all clear in my head, it's great. If I speak at that point, the speech is going to go like in one ear and out the other. It's going to go from my head to your head. But if, and I really try to do this, I force myself to go through the second stage of thinking, which is marinating on the idea and thinking to myself, how does this idea impact my own life? What difference does it make to my own life? And that's when my heart, I actually feel a sensation in my heart that my heart leaps as I feel excited or nervous or anxious about something. I recoil or I pull towards, and I feel an attraction or aggression about something, whatever it is that I'm thinking, right? And now what happens is when I speak now, it's not coming from my head. Now it's coming from my heart. And you know what's going to happen if my speech comes from my heart? It's going to hit you in your heart. And that's what a good speech is.
As it does.
Thank you. But I just want you to realize that this is defining our humanity. Because if you don't experience das, you're just a kopmensch. You're a head person. I mean, you're smart, but you're just not present. You're not here. But if you're able to meditate to reach the place of das, then what you've done is that you're now guiding your own emotions. So instead of getting excited about the latest Netflix release or about the headlines of the New York Times, why should the guy Salzberger in the New York Times editorial, why should he be the guy that's guiding the agenda of people's consciousness? You know, Trump the other day he wrote a tweet or something, and he mentioned, very, very interesting, he mentioned the name of the guy in charge of the Wall Street Journal. I don't know if you saw that. And I was like, look at it. Why would he mention that guy's name? And I read about it, that he was identifying that guy, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, as the most powerful personality in the Republican Party. And I was saying to myself, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Because the guy who decides what makes the news and what doesn't make the news, what's on the front cover, what's on the back cover, what's above the fold and below the fold, is the guy that really guides our emotions. So he really is a very powerful person, because most of us are spiritually unconscious. And we're just reacting to the emotional foie gras that's stuffed into our throats because we're not really alive.
That's a very good point. You put a name on something like that, and it just elicits emotion.
But when you make a decision and say, no, today I'm going to be human. Today I'm, like my teacher in yeshiva said, are you alive today because you're alive, or just because you happen to not have been hit by a truck? Like, are you really alive, or are you just not dead? Today I'm going to make an active, conscious decision to guide my emotion today. Today I'm going to choose who I'm loving. Today I'm going to choose what I'm feeling. So when I woke up this morning, I went to mikveh in the morning. I did my meditation, my studies. By the time I came to shul, I was off to the kids. I got a little late here. Got a little, navigating through the various diapers situations. But by the time I got to shul, now I came late. But when I daven, I want to go through that das. When I daven, before I start davening, I know what I'm going to be thinking about today in my davening. A very common question the Hasidim will ask each other is, "No, mit was hast du gedavent heint?" Which means, "No, with what did you daven today?" With what did you daven today? Now it's interesting because you, Keith, you sit there with a book, with Chayenu, right? And it's very interesting because you're doing the Chayenu maybe to, because that's more interesting to you, which is very, very beautiful. I'm not going to criticize it in any way. But like when I daven, I'll pull out a chapter of Tanya before I start, and I'll study the chapter of Tanya. But generally speaking, I'm coming into davening knowing what it is that I want to feel today. I know what it is that I want to internalize. So through the words of davening, I'm mouthing the words of davening, and I'm thinking about that idea. And I'll get under my talis and I'll ruminate. Think about that for a moment. The word ruminate. You know what ruminate means?
Yeah, chew your cud.
chew your cud. Chew your cud makes the animal kosher. 2 signs of a kosher animal, right? Split hoof and ruminate. To be kosher, you need to ruminate. You don't eat your food just once. You eat it 5 times, right? The cow has 5 stomachs. You want to ruminate that idea over and over and over because that's when it becomes yours. Yeah.
My struggle is, and I don't know, some of us also have it, is that you start davening and you get into your daily thoughts. And is there anything that we can do? Because you're telling me, like,
You lose
you have the ability, or at least, you've achieved, I think, much more than I ever would, in terms of, I know what I have in my mind. So as I'm davening, you may have certain thoughts, but there may be proper thoughts that, not that I'm talking about unholy thoughts, but if something goes in work on my mind, and sometimes when you daven, your mind drifts into a problem as you're saying the word, but your mind is elsewhere.
I'm sorry, I disagree with you.
No, I'm telling you what I'm experiencing.
I know, but
I'm thinking.
I think you're making a mistake. I'll tell you what.
I can control it.
I'll give you a quick story and I'll wrap it up.
It goes so fast.
And next thing you know, you're in Wall Street already.
No, it's like your davening goes faster. You're mouthing the words, but you lost.
Let me tell you this. I'm going to give you a tool. Okay. So there's a beautiful story about a chassid came to one of the Rebbes and he asked him, Rebbe, he asked him this exact question. I can't control my thoughts. I'm always all over the place. I can't daven with anything. I'm everywhere. Right? So the Rebbe said, if you want the answer to this question, you're going to have to speak to a certain chassid. He'll give you the answer. Say he travels through the winter, the Siberian winter, to find this guy. He finds him late at night. It's midnight, and he gets freezing cold outside. It's a blizzard. And he sees the light on. He sees the guy right by the window. So he knocks at the window. He says, I'm so glad. Please let me in. The guy completely ignores him. He sits outside for like 2 hours in the blizzard. Blizzard, freezing cold. And the guy's like right there, 2 feet away. He's completely ignoring him. Eventually, the guy lets him in. And the guy, when he finally gets to his senses, he says, couldn't you let me in 2 hours ago? So the guy says, I'm the master of my home. I allow only those whom I wish to enter into my home. And those who I don't wish to enter, stay outside.
Right.
And in that moment, it dawned on the visitor that he had actually received the answer to his question. That was somehow the answer, the experience of sitting outside for 2 hours. You know that I'd like you to write that, to do a quick exercise. Please don't think about white polar bears for the next 10 seconds. What'd you think about? Nothing. What'd you think about?
A white polar bear.
Okay. I told you not to think about a white polar bear, right? Because human beings, we can only think about one thing at a time. You can only think about one thing at a time.
Right.
You have a choice to make which thought you allow in and which thought you don't allow in. Now, if it's all emptiness, if it's like the savannah of Africa, it's open field, anybody who wants could just waltz in onto the stage, right? But if you come in proactive and say, today we're thinking about this. Right now, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be thinking about this idea. Guess what? You're not going to be thinking about the white polar bear because you're thinking about something. There's no space. You can't get in. There's only one thought in at a time. It's a bottleneck.
You're giving
right?
yourself your own polar bear thing, and
That's it. Exactly. And what you don't want, you just say, if you don't want to think about something, don't say, I'm not going to be thinking about this. Don't say that. Say, I am going to be thinking about this. And that's your tool.
Yeah.
All right? Tanya chapter 3 is amazing. It's amazing. Some interesting comments coming in. I notice sometimes that even when you don't know what to learn and where to search, everything comes by itself. So there's somebody outside of your mind who knows you better than yourself. Yep, that's Hashem. Daniel the trucker, Rabbi, really love your lectures. Been watching since beginning of COVID. I'm about to buy one of your books. What would you say is your bestseller? I'll let you decide. Oh, you want my book? I'll show it to you right now. I'm gonna put it on YouTube.
I have it here on Amazon.
Oh, you found it on Amazon. That's it.
Yeah. But here's my question.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay $36.99 if you're going to drop the price in a couple of days.
It
You
could
set
be.
him up. You set him up.
Yeah, didn't you tell me something
I'm
before?
willing to buy the book, but only if you guarantee.
Okay, Danny, I'm gonna post it to you right now.
You'll pay $29.99.
I see another comment coming in. I seem to be ignored for being personally proactive in my spiritual life. I was told that I asked too much due to my abusive childhood. Chabad rabbis say no one can mentor me, so I just have it at home. I am so sorry to hear that comment at Toby Coke 67. People ignore you. I'm really sorry to hear that. And I don't know where you live, but send me an email, rabbi@jewishgardens.com. I'd love to engage with you. rabbi@jewishgardens.com. I would love to speak with you. Take care, everybody. God bless. Have a lovely day.
You know, I'll have to confess.